And here we are with our friend Keith Martin joining us via Zoom from the left coast, and our fourth edition or segment of Keith's blog, We Bring It to Life. And of course, this week your blog on your newsletter was Flat Out. I love the play on I love the play on words. Looks like you did a little Rover Club action as well too.
We had, what's happening to the Rover Club as it evolves into people buying LR3s and LR4s. It becomes a larger social aspect to it.
Right.
So instead of just going out and rock climbing and seeing who can turn their rig over the most, we ended up going wine tasting.
Sure. Well, those rigs are awfully fancy now. They're not, they're not the old, the Land Rovers of yore, right?
Yeah. No, and they're deluxe. They're what I like. The Land Rover 4 my friend has. It's it kneels like a camel.
Right.
So for me, with my handicap, it's easier to get in and out of it.
Sure.
My only question about those rigs is that they're so pretty, and they're slab sided and we're used to going through tree branches that are kind of sticking out across the trail and
sure.
just slamming into them, and I would be reluctant, just like I'd be reluctant to take a Porsche Dakar off-road.
Yeah, I'm the same way.
If you see a Porsche Dakar, you take a picture of one off-road, I'll send you $1,000.
Yeah, well, it's like my SUV that my wife drives. It's never been off-road. The only off-road it's ever done is when I actually ran off the road just a little bit and actually got the wheel on the grassy side. But, other than that, I mean, people just don't use. I mean, my SUV has very thin, low-profile tires on it. And it's like a sports car tire. And it's strange because people just really don't take them off-road. You talked about the old Land Rovers. I mean, they came scratched from the factory, right?
Right. Well, they were crude and primitive, and they relied a lot on your skill set to get through things.
Sure, absolutely. And you have an older Land Rover, a Discovery too, right? That would have been 2000.
I had one until 2 days ago. I had one.
Oh, really?
Yeah. I was getting ready. I had it for 3 years. My son used it for snowboarding. I put steel bumpers and a center diff lock in it. A really great rig, but it was time for it to go.
Right.
Because he's going to college in a place where there's not a lot of snow. And so I thought, well, what I'll do, I don't have any paperwork on this rig, so I'll take it to a shop and do a pre-purchase inspection and do a compression check.
Very smart.
That way, when we put it on BAT, we've got some paperwork to back it up.
Sure.
Well, the pre-purchase inspection came back with $8,500 worth of work.
Whoops.
The rig has a value of $2.
Right. This is sounding hauntingly familiar, like your Mercedes purchase that we didn't get to talk about.
So we made a deal, and it went to a home. And then my son bought a 1998 Volvo V70 T5.
Nice. Those things are fun to drive.
Yeah, he's liking it, and it's a nice change for him. I love the Rover. I've had Rovers for 20 years, but it was just time. A Volvo wagon is more of a teenager's car.
Yeah, it makes more sense and haul lots of stuff. Haul the always. My parents always wanted me to have a car big enough so that I would be the one who drove. They trusted me, but they didn't trust my ne'er-do-well friends. So they always wanted me to be in something that was big enough that we could. Yeah. I would be the one who always drove. So I didn't like that idea one damn bit, though. I wanted something two-seater.
Do you get many Rovers in there at Classic Auto Mall?
We get a few here and there, but not very many. And it's unusual because there's a lot of woodsy stuff around here. There's a lot of people who snowmobile, who side-by-side, who 4x4, who four-wheel drive stuff that's around this area. So you'd think that you'd see more, but we don't. We see tons of Broncos and Internationals and things like that, but not a whole lot of Land Rovers, surprisingly.
And when you say Internationals, do you mean the new ones?
No. I mean the old, like the Scouts and the Adventurers and those things were really, really cool. I've seen the new ones. I guess they're all electric, right? I
don't know what I have mixed feelings about the redone Bronco and the redone International because they're not what they were.
No, they're a far cry from what they were. Yeah. That's the one thing I kind of like about the Jeep CJ or the Jeep Wranglers is they've held somewhat true to what they were.
Yeah, the Jeeps also, they have a really active group. Out here it's called the Jolly Jeepers.
Right. I like that name. That's great.
But they're always busy doing it. With a rig like that, you have got to have an active club so that at least once a month you're out on the trail.
Right, because if you're not out on the trail with those things, that's the whole idea behind it, and that's the whole enjoyment factor of it as well too. And it's one of those things that people kind of look at you funny when you say, "Oh, let's take it out on the trail," and they look at you like, "Oh, we've never done that before." That's you can take these things off road. Yes, that's what they were designed for. And if you remember the first Broncos, they were rude and crude. I mean, they were just utility vehicles, no different than a pickup truck.
Yeah, and we loved them.
We loved them. We absolutely did. And we loved the fact that my Blazer, that you had some rusty old bolts that you could take off and take the top off if you were so inclined and had 30 guys with you.
Was there any cooler thing than a full-size Blazer with the hardtop off?
It was the coolest ever. It looked like, I don't know, there was just something magical about that. You wanted to be on a beach driving down next to the wild horses and some hot girls with you and a case of beer. Oh, we couldn't do that, right? And that looked like a lot of fun. And not very many people took the top off of those Blazers because they were hard.
Yeah, right. No, it was a real era. When the Blazers and Broncos came out, it was a revolutionary time for American SUVs.
Right. Well, like the Grand Wagoneer. I mean, what an interesting car that was back in the day. And with their final iteration in 1991 with the wood, with the faux wood sides. But that was the start of what we know as a modern day SUV now, right?
I had one of those 91s, and you could tell them by the little hood ornament that was way out in the front.
Right.
And I had an earlier one where I had to lock in the hubs, but I couldn't believe with the Grand Wagoneer you get that leather, and
a fancy stereo, and
and a pretty good off-road capability for what it was.
Sure, they're pretty cool, and it's. Pardon me, but it's the one kind of resto mod that I've seen lately that I really like. Dennis Collins from Collins Brothers did a resto mod 91G Grand Wagoneer with a Hemi in it. It was pretty darn cool.
We were having a big talk last night about the whole notion of how much horsepower is enough.
Right. I'm thankful that when I was growing up, my Trans Am had 180 horsepower, because if I'd have had a Hellcat or a Demon, we wouldn't be having this conversation. I'd be dead, because we went as fast as whatever would go that we had.
That's right.
So in continuing with your recent blog post talking about, you ended up in the old reliable 2021 Hyundai Elantra and had a little incident with the Hyundai Elantra.
We walked out from this wine tasting place we're at, and there was a roofing screw in the sidewall of my car.
Nothing worse.
And I'm just looking at that, and it's about 5 o'clock. It's starting to get dark. The traffic's picking up. I'm about 40 miles from home on the freeway. And I'm thinking, well, maybe it's just stuck in there and it's not really leaking air. Right.
Mr. So Optimistic.
Yeah, well, I have to be. And I had some duct tape I could have put over the screw. And I turned on the car, and then the tire pressure monitor thing came on and said 3 tires at 33 and 1 at 14.
Oh.
And I've been stuck on the side of a freeway with a flat tire before. And I would call that one of my least favorite things on the planet.
100%.
So we look on the phone. We found a little Indy gas station that was open. This was a Sunday afternoon at 5 o'clock. There were a couple guys working on a car in there, and the Volvo has a Space Saver tire, but it's a real tire.
Right.
And we talked to the guys, and they said, "Yeah, we'll change it out for you. It won't charge you anything." And we paid them $25, and 15 minutes later, we're back on the road with the Space Saver, and right. I felt so. If I hadn't noticed that screw, that thing would have gone flat on me while I was on the shoulder of the freeway.
Yeah, and there's, like you said, there is absolutely nothing worse. My son one time had a flat tire, and we had taught the kids how to change tires, but he had a van that had this weird contraption where you had like a handle, and it would unscrew from the inside, and it would lower down below, and it had this whole architecture, and it's 3 o'clock in the morning, and he's calling me, and I can hear the trucks whizzing by him, and I mean, I'm in panic mode trying to walk him through this, and I don't really know the whole process either. I'm just guessing. So, and I'm not always a very good guesser. So it was concerning at the least.
Well, it worked out okay. It was really, for me, so that week we ended up taking the 911S out, put 100 miles on it, put 100 miles on the Jaguar V12, put 100 miles on the Hyundai. It's what's interesting when you drive a new car like a Hyundai it totally removes you from the sense that you're actually driving.
Exactly. Yeah, you're just kind of, it's an appliance, right? It's just
when you're, and I love it for that. I mean, that's what its job is. But when you're in the Jag or the 911, you're watching the gauges, you're listening to the engine, you're actively involved in the driving experience itself, which is why you and I love this thing, is because it's a sport.
It is a sport, and it's fun to master a different type of car or a different type of feeling, or a car with or without power steering, or a car with bias ply tires. It's fun to master whatever the nuances are of those cars. Like you said, those get in. No wonder people get distracted driving these things, because there's not much to do.
I would agree with that. And I just read a study by VW where they've decided that touchscreens are not the answer.
Right. Well, duh. I've thought that, but.
No, listen, I love the fact that with my Hyundai to heat the seat, I just have to press the seat heater button. I don't have to go into a screen, go down to seats, go down to temperature.
Yeah. Like the radio, like the volume knob on the stereo, just make it a damn knob, I just want to be able to grab it. So I love the questions at the end of and we haven't done this in the past, but the questions that you put at the end of your blog on how often do you check the tire pressure in your classic car? And it's funny because it would be interesting to hear people's responses, because some of them be lying and say, oh, I do it all the time, when they don't. But every time I take my car out, I do a quick pressure check first. It depends on the car and how I'm using it. Whenever I wash the car or do something routine maintenance, I check tire pressure every month or two. I like this one. At the start of each driving season, I just make sure tire pressures are set, and that's good enough. That's probably most.
That's probably true also with modern cars. You and I grew up with tube tires and different things and a slow leak was not an unusual thing to have on your car.
Or a leaky, or a car leaking fluids either. I mean, it's funny that people today panic when they see a drop of oil leaking out of a car. And if it's a Corvair, that's a good thing.
Well, I have a story to tell you. Yes. So my son's driving our 65 Alfa Julia Spider really for the first time yesterday. We drove 100 miles. He drove really great.
Right.
But we stopped and I had him put a quart of oil in before we headed out. At the first rest stop at about 50 miles out, we pull over and smoke is just pouring out from the engine.
Wow.
At first I thought it was on fire.
Right.
And then I thought, oh yeah, and let's see this. The fire extinguisher is in which car? That's not in the car I'm in, because why would you do that?
Sure, that would be too easy.
Let's see, I've got a can of Fix-A-Flat here. That's probably not going to work on the fire. So there's all this. So he opens the hood. And I said, Bradley, when you put oil in the car, you took the oil cap off, right, of the cam covers? He said, I did, Dad. He said, where is that oil cap now? He said, well, it fell down behind the fan, and it's just sitting there.
Oh, my goodness gracious.
But you know what was good about it, Stewart, is it was a lesson for him that he'll never forget.
He'll never forget, and it was a great lesson. And one of those ones that no harm, no foul, no damage was done, and you'll never make that mistake again, like we all do. Keith,
you can't learn without making mistakes.
You absolutely cannot. So tell people how to find Sports Car Market magazine and do all the wonderful things that they need to do with this fantastic magazine.
First of all, we've been around 38 years, and we are the authoritative voice of the collector car market. If you want to read what real experts know about going on at auctions, you need to read Sports Car Market. If you think about the trolls on Bring a Trailer are interesting, think about expert trolls, guys who really know what they're talking about and looking over the cars. We have a special in 1995, 6-month test drive 6. So you go to sportscarmarket.com/test drive number 6. You get 6 months of the magazine. You get our guide to restoration. You get our guide to Concours. You get our price guide. You get our online archives. 3 of us here have worked at the New York Times, and we try to break the standard of the magazine like the Wall Street Journal and the New York Times. So that I personally guarantee you will be so thrilled with this magazine. If you don't like it, drop me an email, and I will refund all $19.95.
Absolutely, and I bet you'll have no takers on that, because it is everything as described, and it's a wonderful publication. And just like what we're talking about, there's lots of this kind of stuff in there that you talk about, that you hear about, that you'll learn so much about the car world just by reading all the descriptions of the cars and the take of the expert when they're writing theirs. I mean, it's just a wealth of knowledge every month, and not something that you can just always Google and find on the internet, right?
No, you can't. It's all behind a paywall on the internet. You can get it at bookstores, Barnes and Noble, and so forth. But it's sort of this. It's written by smart people for smart people.
There you go. I couldn't have said it any better. Keith Martin, thanks again for joining us this week on our special Bring Your Blog to Life. And we'll do it again next week on the Classic Automall Show.
I look forward to this.
Take care. We'll see you next time.
Bye-bye.
The Classic Automall Show with their host, Stewart Howden.